My name's Aurelia. I am the station leader here at Rothera Research Station.
And my name's Matt, and I'm the Tower Supervisor here at Rothera.
Rothera Research Station is located on the western side of the Antarctic Peninsula. So the Antarctic Peninsula is the little landmass that sticks out of the Antarctic continent, sort of like a finger going towards the southern tip of South America. And we are about halfway up on the western side of the peninsula.
So what is the job of the station leader?
It's my responsibility to look after everyone who lives here at Rothera. I'm a little bit like the mayor of the town. So I look after people's welfare. I make sure that all the operations are running smoothly. I make sure that everyone is supported in what they need to do their jobs effectively here. I also have oversight of all the safety of people here on site. So making sure that all of their jobs are done safely and that we minimize the risk that people are exposed to when they work here in this environment. And I look after what we call environmental compliance. So because we work in Antarctica, there's a lot of obligation on us to reduce our impact on the environment, because essentially we are here to study the environment and look after it.
And what is the job of the Tower Supervisor at Rothera Research Station?
Well, Rothera is a really unique place. We actually have a little airfield here, and BATS operate 5 different aircraft, and we fly them from here all over the continent in Antarctica. And my job's to speak to the pilots on the radios from a little operations tower that we've got. We've got a lovely view of all of Rothera Research Station into the bay, and we can see the mountains and everything. And we can speak to the aircraft all the way deep into the deep field as they're taking scientists away, many hundreds of miles away to do their research and things. And then I'm involved in helping with coordinating construction, making sure that's done safely with our aircraft operating and things like that as well. So yeah, I've got a lovely view, which is really good in the job.
Well, speaking of the view, could you show us outside your window?
Should we go out that way?
I think we should, yeah. I'm going to scoot to the side.
Okay. Oops. Here is the view outside at Rothera today. It's a very windy day. You might be able to see the top of the runway just on one of the sides there. We've got lots of icebergs. You can see the sea kind of in the wind. We've got a little bit of sea ice, and there's actually 1 or 2 tiny seals in the distance as well. So it's a windy but very Antarctic day here today.
What is the hardest or most difficult part of the journey to Antarctica?
Different people make the journey here to Rothera in different ways. You're all aware of making its way down from the UK at the moment, but myself and Aurelia, we flew down this year. So we fly via normal commercial routes through South America down to the bottom of Chile in a place called Punta Arenas. It's what we call a gateway city. It's one of the cities that has the ability to fly aircraft down to Antarctica, and we've got our Dash 7 aircraft. So we wait for a good weather spell, and we fly from there down to Rothera when the weather's nice. And because the weather's so bad in Antarctica at that time of year, we're transitioning from the winter season into the summer season. There's lots of bad weather that can prevent flying, so sometimes we're waiting for quite a while, and that can be a bit of a humdinger sometimes, Ray, can't it?
Yeah, I would say that's the most exciting, but also the most difficult part of the journey is that the last bit from when you're either in South America, or sometimes we can also fly through the Falkland Islands. The waiting there, the anticipation that builds, but at the same time you are so close, and you're just waiting for this weather window here in Antarctica or good conditions to fly across the Drake's Passage to make your journey here. So that is both really exciting and can be really frustrating at the same time, when you can be stuck for a few days, you could be stuck for a few weeks waiting for good weather in Punta Arenas.
What do you see when you're arriving in Antarctica, and what do you feel?
I think it very much depends on whether you've been here before or not. So both Matt and I have worked at Rothera for many seasons. So I would say when I arrive here in Antarctica, it feels a tiny bit like coming home, because the station becomes your little surrogate home. We've both been working here for a number of years, and you keep coming back, you keep meeting the same people. So it does feel a little bit like home. Yeah, for me, the sights of flying into Antarctica are extremely familiar. What you would see is, on a good day, you'll start seeing the icebergs as you approach the peninsula from from the north, and kind of you get further and further south. And then at some point you'll see the continent. So you see mountains that are covered in white. You'll see glaciers. Obviously, you'll see the sea, and depending on which time of the year you come in, the sea is still extremely blue because the plankton bloom hasn't started yet. So if you see any icebergs, you can see that beautiful cyan blue around them. So that's absolutely incredible. And then, yeah, when you fly into Rothera, at first you can't see it because the scale of the landscape around it dwarfs our little station. So at first you don't see it, and then you start recognizing the views that we have here, but from a different perspective. So you can see the mountain ridges, and then all of a sudden you recognize, oh, that's where we are. And then you can see our tiny, tiny station.
Is there a limit in size when it comes to planes going to Antarctica? From where do they start usually?
So yeah, we've got quite a small runway here at Rothera. It's a bit shorter than what you'd see at your normal international airport. It's just about 900 meters long. So we operate in the Antarctic 4 Twin Otters. So these are small planes with 2 engines on, and they're the ones that we put our scientists on. We can fit some of the aircraft with airborne survey kit. So we had a really interesting campaign just yesterday, actually, where one of the planes had all of these survey pods on that they can use to analyse things in the atmosphere, and they flew in conjunction with the Sir David Attenborough doing some really interesting atmospheric science. And then the Dash 7 is a little bit of a bigger plane. That's what as we said, we bring lots of people in on. It's like a small 4-engined propeller passenger plane, if you like. And that's about the largest plane that we can get here at Rothera. We also have the aircraft that other Antarctic programs come through. So they've got lots of Twin Otters. They come through and they go to their stations, but they come through Rothera because it's the closest place to Chile that they can come through. And one of those aircraft is called a Basler. It's quite a big twin-engined aircraft as well, but those aircraft were first built during the Second World War in the 1940s, and we're still flying them today because they're some of the best aircraft to be flying around the Antarctic.
What is the temperature? Does it get colder at night like here in Kentucky?
So at the moment it's about 0 degrees Celsius. We had a bit of snowfall yesterday, and the snow is quite sticky. So I expect over the course of the day, some of the snow around will melt and we will get some puddles. It does turn colder overnight as the sun sort of lowers a little bit more over the horizon, and therefore it gets a bit colder. But at the moment it's around 0 degrees. Over the last few days it was a little bit colder. It changes at this time of the season by a few degrees, but yeah, that's how cold it is at the moment.
And very soon we won't have any nighttime at all, will we? We don't really have any nighttime at the moment. The sun comes down, it just sets just below the horizon, and then it comes straight back up. But towards the end of this month, we're going to have the last sunrise for a good couple of weeks, just over a month. And I quite look forward to that because the sun just hangs above the horizon and then starts coming back.
Yeah.
How cold is it in Antarctica?
Well, that depends on where you're going in the Antarctic. As Aurelia's just said, it's quite warm here at the moment. Here at Rothera, well, we had about -8, -9 the other day, and then the wind chill, when it's really windy, it can make it feel a lot colder. But we had some of our Twin Otter aircraft take some people to a deep field just a few days ago to a place called Waste Divide. We've got lots of big machinery there that we take lots of scientific equipment around the continent with. And down there it was -34 degrees, and that is really cold. And then when you put the wind chill on top of that, it's much, much colder. But the coldest temperature ever experienced in the Antarctic is -89 degrees, and that was over at 89 degrees Celsius, yes, absolutely. And that was over at the Russian research station Vostok. So it can get very, very chilly.
How do you feel being stuck in the cold?
I wouldn't really say that we're stuck in the cold. We obviously have our buildings. So right now we're in a building called New Bransfield House, which has our, as you can see, our sort of nice lounge where we can hang out, and our dining room and kitchen and things like that. So within our buildings, it's the same as it would be in your home. So we're wearing a jumper right now, but we could also be wearing a t-shirt. It's warm enough for that. But we get issued a lot of really, really warm clothing, specifically to keep us safe from the conditions outside. So we have different kinds of clothing that we can layer on top of each other depending on the conditions. So for example, if it's really windy, like Matt mentioned, then we might stick some windproof layers on top of sort of our warmer, maybe down layers. And if it's really sunny outside and it's just kind of cold and still, then we might be changing those layers. So We've got really thick boots that we issue for people in the winter. They look a little bit kind of like astronaut shoes. They're quite sort of clunky and big, but they've got this really nice foam layer inside that make your feet feel like you're inside a cloud, and they protect you. They protect you from the cold from below. So we've got a lot of specialist clothing specifically developed for these areas and for managing the conditions that we're in.
Have you felt the water with your hand?
I've actually more than done that. I felt the water with my entire body. So before I was the station leader here at Rothera, I was a marine biologist and worked here as part of one of the research teams. And part of my jobs was to go diving in the sea and collect animals for scientific studies and do measurements underwater and take pictures of the seabed for surveys that we do to see how climate change affects the animals living on the seafloor. Now I say I felt it with my entire body. We do wear what's called dry suits. So they actually have a seal here at the neck and they have a seal at the arms. So you shouldn't get wet inside your kind of suit.
And the water's quite chilly, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so at the moment, I would say it's probably around -1, -0.5 degrees Celsius, but in the depth of winter, it can go down to as low as -1.8 degrees Celsius. And that's because the water here is sea water, so it's salty, and therefore it can go to lower than 0 degrees without freezing.
Do you get a chance to interact with the animals?
Well, we've got to be really careful. So there's a rule in the Antarctic Treaty that says we've got to stay a certain distance away from the animals. So we do get a lot of animals here that we can see, but we've got to make sure that we keep a respectful distance away from them. So we get lots of penguins around here. We've got some Adelie penguins that are showing up at the moment. We've got lots of different types of seals. So we've got Weddell seals, we've got crab-eater seals, leopard seals. We've seen some of those around recently. We've got these really big elephant seals that you get the really big ones up in South Georgia. We get some of the smaller ones down here. And we get lots of bird life as well. So there's skuas. We even have things that are very similar to seagulls back here as well. So there's no escaping the seagulls. We get lots of tiny little petrels. There are the really big storm petrels. There are Antarctic cormorants. We've got a lot of wildlife, and it's really exciting to see. And then later on, maybe in a couple of weeks, we'll start seeing some of the whales here. So we get humpback whales, minke whales, the orca will start arriving. So as the summer progresses, it gets really exciting with the wildlife.
What would be some surprising and exciting organisms to find?
Every now and again over winter, a emperor penguin will get lost from wherever else is traveling and will turn up here at Rothera, which is always very, very exciting for the staff that are overwintering here on our station, because we don't usually get emperor penguins here. So that's really exciting.
Well, I think there's some other really exciting things as well that I'm not one of the divers, so I never get to see it, but we do have an aquarium here that some of the divers bring back some creatures from. Do you want to say some of it, like the Glyptonotus or something?
Yeah, so we do get some really exciting wildlife that lives on the seafloor, and those sometimes get collected for scientific studies. One of those is called Glyptonotus. It's a sea louse, so it's about this big, and it looks a little bit like a sort of armored little insect. Well, it's quite big insect, but it's not an insect. It's actually a crustacean, so it's related to crabs. But it's this little crustacean that walks around, but they are related to woodlice back in the UK, and they live underwater. We also get things called sea lemons. They look just like a lemon sitting on the seafloor, but they are actually a type of snail that doesn't have a shell anymore, and its foot, so what you would normally get that it walks around in, kind of has gone around it to form this protective layer, and it's bright yellow living on the seafloor. So we do get some really exciting things under the water that, as Matt says, not a lot of people have the chance to see, but our diving team sometimes collect them for studies, and then they give tours of the aquarium to let other people partake in the absolute fascination that is sea life. I'm a bit biased, but...
Have you had any polar bear encounters? And if so, what is the procedure to follow when in such situations?
We don't actually have any polar bears down here in the Antarctic. So we get the penguins down here, and up in the Arctic, up in the North Pole, that's where you get your polar bears. So the way I try to remember is penguins in the South Pole, polar bears up in the North. So luckily we don't have any procedures that we need to follow to keep ourselves safe from any polar bears. We do have some pictures around station that people have put up of polar bears. It's a little bit of a joke, but
How does it feel to stay for such a long period of time?
Yeah, so when I first started working for BAS, like I already said, I was a scientist, and I actually spent the winter here at Rothera. So I arrived in December, I believe, and then I stayed for an entire year and didn't leave until March, the year and a bit after. So I stayed for, what's that, 15 months? 14, 15 months here at Rothera. And yeah, it is very daunting. I think I didn't really think too much about it. My family, I think, thought a lot more about it and was quite worried and sort of at the idea of not being in touch for that long. That was before we had as great an internet connection as we have right now. So video calling your family was not really a possibility. You could pick up the phone and sometimes the satellite connection would drop out, so the call was interrupted. And you didn't have that good a connection with people back at home, which made it a bit more difficult. But it meant that you really had to engage with the people here on station. So I made some incredible friends that I am still very much in touch with now, 6 years later. And you just get really immersed in this environment, and you pick up new hobbies, and there's a lot of work to do as well. So you do stay busy with that, but it is difficult sometimes. I definitely got homesick here and there, but then you need to sort of look around you and see where you are and see what wonderful people you're here with. And then that sort of brightens your day and you can get through it.
What do you miss the most, and what things have you brought from home?
Missing the most, probably the people back at home. It's quite a long time to spend away from your family and your friends and your loved ones. So missing their company is quite a big deal. The more smaller things, a lot of people, like myself included, miss walking in the forest. I miss salads and fresh fruit and vegetables. Although I have to say, with the Attenborough being inbound, we will soon get some new fresh vegetables and fresh fruit that they deliver for us kindly. But yeah, those are the kind of things I miss, but it is an incredible place, so you kind of get that, you get repaid for that. What have I brought with me? I quite like to have a bit of a cozy room that I can retreat to. So I brought some pictures of my friends and family, and I brought some nice smells for making a really nice and cozy place, and my own bed sheets, which is always quite nice to snuggle into.
And I've got to echo these sentiments as well. I really miss the forest. I miss hearing the wind in the trees. So I've actually got some recordings, so I can listen to that sometimes. And the bird song, I miss the bird song that we get back home. And what have I brought with me? Yeah, it's really nice to personalise your room. So I've got lots of photos of friends and family and things that I've done over the years that I just like to have there by my bed to remember. And then I've got some nice tea bags and other sort of flavoured teas that we don't always get down here. And then I've got a Kindle full of books that I want to read. So yeah, I've got stuff to keep me going.
I've got some nice treats for the festive season, but they're not coming out yet because otherwise they wouldn't last very long.
How do you maintain morale and teamwork for such a long period of time?
That's a very good question, and it's one of the core challenges of my job as a station leader, actually. As you can imagine, we have up to 160 people that live at Rothera during the summer, and everyone has to share a room, so we don't have single rooms for people, so we ask everyone to share a room. Some people share a room just as 2 people, some others have to share a room as 4 people. And as you can imagine, if you share a room with say one of your siblings, it can be quite frustrating to not have your personal space at times, and it can be a challenge if they get up in the morning earlier than you and turn the lights on and you wish to sleep a little bit longer. So it is very challenging to live with the same people in a really busy place for such a long time, where you also work. So we can't go home as such after work. We go home and then we go to dinner and we see the same people that we've already worked with. So similar to on the ship, that can be a real challenge. But the way to manage that is it's an ongoing process. It's trying to find the little things that make people happy and trying to be able to support them, offer people different opportunities for recreation, try to get people to engage in various activities, try to get people to find activities for themselves to do, because it's quite difficult to always be entertaining people actively. So if people are doing exercise, or they've brought some board games with them, or they've got some little craft projects that they want to do, these kinds of things, and reminding people that is available is really, really important. Food plays a massive role in keeping up people's morale. So we've got currently got 4 amazing chefs who work in the kitchen, and they turn out some incredible meals, considering that we have fairly limited food stock available. And that makes a massive, massive difference. So the other day, they went the extra mile and made burritos for everyone that people could just take away. And it was a little bit like going and having a takeout dinner. And sometimes we all get together and watch a movie, for example, and they make popcorn. So yeah, food plays a massive role. And then I think a lot of people also have some incredible job satisfaction from what they do. We work in an absolutely amazing place, and it's a privilege to be able to work in this place and to work for an organization that has such great goals. And we're trying to achieve some amazing things here. We're trying to find out how climate change impacts this continent, but also impacts the entire world. And to be part of that is really satisfying to people. So reminding them of that once every now and again is also really helpful. But yeah, it's an ongoing job. And if you've got any further ideas how we can lift morale or how you do that, then shoot us a message, because I'd really like to hear about it.
What does a typical day in your life look like at Rothera?
I wouldn't say there is necessarily a typical day. It's different every day. It's dependent on what the weather's doing. It's dependent on, for me, what the flying program's doing. But generally, my team, I've got a small team of people that operate with me up in the operations tower. We start at about 6:30 in the morning to start opening up the airfield and getting Rothera ready to commence flying operations for the day. We have a Met brief in the morning, every morning at 7:45. So that's where we've got a Met office weather forecaster who tells everybody on station and the pilots what the weather's going to be like. The pilots can make a decision about whether they want to go flying. And then flying usually starts from about 8:30 in the morning. And we could have a whole day's worth of flying. We can go through until late in the evening sometimes, or sometimes the weather means the flying stops a bit earlier in the day.
In case of medical emergency, how long does it take to get the person to the closest hospital?
That very much depends on the weather, which is an answer that is pretty much always true for the Antarctic. So in a best case scenario, it would be that our Dash 7 aircraft is here at Rothera, and we've got pilots, and the weather works absolutely fine for it to fly. And in that case, if we can get our casualty onto the airplane, they could be in the hospital in Punta Arenas within 6 hours, which is quite good for a remote area that we're in. If it is at a different time of the year, if it's in the winter and we don't have any planes here at Rothera, the runway is covered in snow, and all of our aircraft are up in northern Canada to get serviced and maintained. In that case, it could take up to a week or longer to get someone who has themselves here at Rothera out to the nearest hospital. So we have to be extremely careful here on the station. We've got a lot of procedures in place to keep people safe. We put limits on, things that people are allowed to do, but it's to keep them safe, because it is very difficult to get someone out of Rothera if they have themselves seriously. We do have a doctor on station. So at the moment, we actually have 2 doctors on station who are currently handing over. So one who's just wintered and another one who's arrived to relieve the one who's just wintered. And they are fantastic, but they've got a very limited amount of things to work with. So we've got a little surgery here, and they can treat people, but anything that is severe, we will have to get seen to in a hospital, either in Punta Arenas or the Falkland Islands. So people will have to leave the station.
Is it too cold for ice cream?
Well, it's never too cold for ice cream, is it?
Do you see any rubbish in the ocean?
Yeah, we actually sometimes do. which is quite sad. So every now and again we can see big fishing buoys that have become adrift somewhere else in the Southern Ocean, and the way that the ocean currents work means that every now and again they pop up here in our area, and then we will pick them up and we'll ship them out as waste. But thankfully we don't see a lot of rubbish, or barely any rubbish here on our shores, and if we ever do, then it's usually things that come from our station, so we straight away go pick it up and put it in the bin.
Do you get your drinking water from ice?
No, so we've got an interesting way of getting our drinking water here. We actually use the seawater, and we've got a special machine that converts the seawater into normal drinking water. So yeah, we've got things sucking up the seawater a lot, filters it out, takes the salt water out, and then we've got drinking water, and we use that. We use that for all of our drinking water here. And then at other places in the Antarctic, so for our deep field teams, they will actually use the snow. They'll heat the snow up, melt the snow, and they'll use that as their drinking water instead.
Is the weather and climate what you expect for this time of year?
Well, yeah, at this time of year, so we're in the middle of November now, we're still in this bit of a transition into full summer weather. So usually in the core of the summer, so when we get to like late December, January, the weather actually sometimes gets quite nice. It's nice and sunny. It's not too windy, but right now it's really windy. We've got that wind chill that makes it feel quite cold, but it's actually quite warm. And this is the kind of normal process that we expect at this time of year. However, at various places along the Antarctic Peninsula, it has been getting a lot warmer over recent years and decades. And up near the tip of the peninsula, they hit nearly 20 degrees the other year. So the weather is changing with climate change here, and it's quite scary when we hit some of those really high positive temperatures. It's not what we should be seeing down here.
What is your favourite thing about Antarctica?
I think one of my favourite things about Antarctica is the silence. And I don't think you can really understand that until you've actually been in a place like this. You also get it in the Arctic, but when I'm away from the station, up on the hill, we've got a little area where we can go skiing. If you're there and if there's no wind, you cannot hear any sounds from the station, and you can't hear anything, and the snow absorbs all the other noise, and it's just absolutely still and serene, and you're really just there with yourself, and it's very, very calming, and it's just absolutely incredible. And you don't get that really anywhere else in Europe, or even probably in Northern America, because you always have the sound of nature with you, but of trees and birds, but you don't get that so much here. So it's just absolutely still and calm and silent, and I really, really love that. And I really love how this place makes you find out a lot more about yourself as a person, because you're away from friends and family, and it's quite challenging at times. And I think, just being with yourself for a while, not being on your devices, not being sort of distracted by other things that are going on, just being there makes you realize a lot of things about yourself. So I think that's fantastic. And then I'm absolutely fascinated by how it can be so calm one day, and then the next day it's like it is outside right now, where it's blowing 35 knots, and all of a sudden nature has roared up and is making it really challenging for us as humans to exist here. So the absolute sheer power of nature, we can really feel here, and I think that's quite incredible, because again, in a lot of other places in the world, we just exist as humans, and it feels like we have sort of conquered nature, but it's absolutely not the case. Down here in Antarctica, nature is the queen, and we have to work around what is possible because of the weather, and that really fascinates me about Antarctica.
And another thing that just absolutely flabbergasts me, we've got all these icebergs out in the bay at the moment, and some of them are really big, and they'll weigh millions, up to tens of millions of tons, and it's there floating on the water, and then sometimes they'll start toppling over, or big bits will crack off of them, and that's an absolutely incredible thing to see. And it's just, when you put those numbers to an iceberg that you see, it doesn't quite make sense. How's that happening? It's humongous. That's really heavy. But yeah, that's phenomenal to see.